Full disclosure, the voice you are listening to now is artificially generated, brought to you by satisphonic.com. See the link in the description for more details. What's the grossest thing you've ever seen someone bring to a potluck? Has a guy bring in his specialty corn. It was legit canned corn in a crock pot with spices. Thing is, he tells us, yeah, my wife took it to her potluck on Tuesday. They didn't eat it, so I saved it on low in the crock pot and brought it here. It was Friday. Corn was brown. Nobody ate it. He kept eating it, saying it was so good. The following Monday, his new name at work was Corn Cob Rob. This is another reason I never eat at potlucks. Some people have no concept of food safety. My grandmother-in-law, everything she brings. The first time was stale cake in a bowl of syrup. It was both cake and soup, while also being neither. She has meat in her deep freezer older than some of her grandchildren. She's a depression, era cook, so expiration dates don't apply to medicine cupboards or freezers. Once she tried to give my daughter, Toyo at the time, cough medicine that expired 9 years before she was even born. Oh God, the meat in the freezer is real. I just cleaned my grandmother's deep freeze out and found meat from 2001 in it. My grandma was famous for sending you home with freezer food that was years old. I mowed her lawn one day and she offered me chicken for lunch. She looked at my expression and said, "Oh, don't be silly. I just bought it yesterday. I wouldn't feed you from the freezer." That's for the relatives who make a big deal of visiting every few years to stay in the will. That's one savage old lady. I was a favorite. Only grandchild to get money for university. The fact I would take her to mass and sit with her, despite being openly an atheist, earned points. That meat can drink, holy shit. Not surprising. Everyone born before about 1950 knows for a fact that the passage of time simply ceases for anything stored in a freezer on the unreachable top shelf of a kitchen cupboard or within any medicine cabinet. Best before dates are rendered null and void. Print film, spices and pharmaceuticals go into suspended animation, and the half-life of even the most unstable radioactive nuclides expand from yoctoseconds to eternity as soon as you close the door. When my dad died in 2014 and I returned, after many years' absence, to clean out the family home, in the medicine cabinet of the half-bath off their bedroom, the one nobody else was allowed to use, I found an old bottle of Sloan's Liniment. Not surprising in itself, as the foul-smelling stuff is still made today. However, this bottle was so old the contents were black as ink instead of its usual tea, brown, and the bottle was sealed with a rock-hard cork instead of a screw cap. Later research indicated that the company abandoned plain corks in favor of screw tops sometime prior to 1920, so the stuff in the cabinet was nearly 100 years old when I discovered it. In fact, it was likely purchased by or for my grandfather, a manual laborer who came to Canada in 1905 and died in 1946. Someone made brownies with ground meat in them to a church potluck. My vegetarian friend discovered this when she bit into one. She was more confused and horrified about their existence than she was upset about eating meat. It was the concept of this abomination itself that was disturbing and baffling. I thought she had to be wrong. You haven't had ground beef in years. You don't know what it tastes like anymore. It's probably something else. I tried them. It was beef. I was disgusted and really confused. Years later, I found out that apparently this was a thing. Someone came up with this, putting beef in brownies, as a substitute for walnuts for people with nut allergies. While this explains it a little, in theory I'm still confused about why someone would assume that people who can't eat walnuts would prefer to eat ground beef brownies, but just regular nut-free brownies. Edit. Since this blew up, I shared it with my sister, who reminded me that she was also there for this, and she had tried the brownies first, and that they were actually the reason she stopped wanting to come to church. I started doubting the entire establishment, she says. I have a severe tree nut allergy, and I would still rather bite into a walnut than ground beef in my brownie. I would rather suffer anaphylaxis than entertain your creativity, is a solid, slight English. Beef as a substitution for walnuts. Oh my God, I've heard it all. I'm telling my chef about this one. If they want to add something for texture, why not just caramel or cookie bits? One of my biggest pet peeves is people putting food together that shouldn't go together, then being surprised when most think it's gross. We had a potluck today, and someone brought some Doritos. People started eating them and complaining that they tasted like dirt. We looked at the bag and it had a promo for Mockingjay Part 1. The chips expired in 2014. This was a mixed department pot. Luck and we haven't found the person that brought the 9-year-old chips. Actually laughing at the person just disappearing, never to be identified. Friend pulled a bag of tortilla chips out of their cupboard. I tried eating one, tasted like paint thinner. I had no idea that tortilla chips could go rancid. Absolutely the worst thing I've ever eaten. We have someone at my work that has expired food all over in his area. He is infamous for it, and one of the first things any new hires get told is to not eat anything he offers. He leaves food in his car all the time and doesn't seem to think it's an issue. Freaking gross. She opened a can of tiny shrimp and poured it out, liquid and all, on top of a block of cream cheese. That was it. I guess we were supposed to eat it with crackers. I never knew you could get canned shrimp. With a tiny shrimp in cocktail sauce. Because I've seen tiny shrimp and cocktail sauce poured over cream cheese. No, just in water. My husband and I still talk about it 20 years later. Someone brought deviled eggs, and instead of sprinkling paprika on them, they used cinnamon. That reminds me of the time my ex tried to make pancakes using cinnamon. Not a bright guy, couldn't figure out why the cinnamon was green and smelled like curry and tasted like curry and had curry written on the side of it, but oh well, must just be some artisan cinnamon or something. I had cereal. I had an ex surprise me with dinner at our place once. Oh, what's that dressing you made? You mixed the ranch, Thousand Island, balsamic, honey mustard and Italian dressings that were in the fridge. Oh, okay. Thanks, babe. My ex once tried to make Alfredo, and we had no cream for the sauce. So he used, I think expired, spray whipped cream like for desserts. Did not work. Somehow, everything was dry and tasted like bad leftovers. My husband did this when he made deviled eggs for his family's Thanksgiving potluck. He couldn't find the paprika, so he used the first red spice jar he could find, which was a barbecue dry rub. It wasn't horrible, but really salted. His family loved it and kept asking me if I had actually made the eggs. Once I was making Mexican rice and was extremely sleep deprived because I had a newborn but insisted on making tamales and rice for my husband and his partner at work. I used cinnamon instead of cumin, didn't realize it until I'd already sent my husband to work with it and sat down to eat my serving. His partner was so nice about it though. Homemade fried chicken, which translated to chicken that I covered in pancake batter and breadcrumbs and dropped into a fry pan until the outside looked cooked. It wasn't even seasoned. An apple pie, but they didn't have apple pie spices like clove, cinnamon or nutmeg, and said they used taco seasoning by accident and expected people to eat it. I, a dumb bitch who likes to torture themselves, tried it and promptly tossed it into the trash when they looked away. I, a dumb bitch. I feel less alone in this world. Fellow dumb food bitches unite. I once wildly changed lanes because I saw my local Burger King had a sign that said, "Cheeto chicken fries are here." There was no traffic, so nobody was impacted by my erratic driving, but it was an unforgettable experience. The best part was the worker behind the counter, who was clearly gobsmacked that anybody wanted Cheeto chicken fries. She asked, "What kind of dipping sauce do you want?" And I asked, "What kind do people usually get?" And she just shook her head like literally nobody has ever wanted these before. I ended up with ranch. They were disgusting, but ranch was definitely the best available option. A Korean-American co-worker brought homemade kimchi, but she admittedly didn't know how to make it and just winged it. It was fermented wrong and was covered in mold, which she didn't seem to understand was bad. The vegetables were basically half liquefied, and it smelled like dumpster juice. The thing is, half of the chefs at work had learned to make kimchi correctly and safely since various different kimchis used to be on the menu before she was hired. So we all instantly knew it was wrong and unsafe, but no one wanted to tell her. Holy shit, don't just wing fermentation. Hey, so I made this yogurt for you. It was so easy. I just strained this old sour milk that was in my fridge and mashed the lumps together. Doesn't it look great? Forget buying yogurt in the store. You can buy kimchi in many grocery stores these days. And if she's Korean American, like I am, there are so many resources or even relatives who could help out. What a horrible way to represent the culture, Lofi. Edit. Yes, and you can easily find many recipes online. At my previous job, I had a co-worker that would frequently cook food because it was his passion and he would bring it in to share with everyone. On a few occasions, someone would get ill after, but infrequently enough that people wrote it off as a coincidence. This co-worker goes out on tour and asks another co-worker to feed his 12 cats while he is gone scoop the litter boxes. Unfortunately, it was discovered the co-worker was cooking serving us food in the same pans he was also sometimes using as litter boxes for his bushel of cats. When confronted, he stated he thought this was fine because he washed them after. We never ate his food again. You'll need to get wormed, I'm not even joking. That is by far the worst one I've read here. This was probably about 5 years ago, and we worked at a vet clinic, which was the real icing on that situation. Casserole with a side of roaches. Not even kidding. They crawled out of the bag she brought her dish in. I stopped participating in potlucks after that. Absolutely not. Straight to jail. We have the best potlucks in the world. Because of jail. Damn, that had to have been embarrassing, but ick how you don't check 30 times if you know you have roaches where you live. People with persistent roach problems can eventually just treat them as a fact of life. They can, and it will never cease to amaze me. I had a friend with a bad infestation. I went to their house and we're chatting at the dining room table. A roach appears on the table, and without missing a beat, my friend swats it off the table while continuing the conversation. I did not go back because I didn't want those motherfuckers hitching a ride to my place. I think potlucks are a terrible idea, unless you know everyone and have been to their homes. This is a perfect example of why. If potlucks were safe, there would be no element of luck. They would be pot safes. Mayo like a food Russian roulette. Grandma's jello salad, made with cottage cheese and celery edit. I love how half the answers are, ong, that's disgusting, and the other half are, yeah, I remember that monstrosity. My great-grandma's was lime jello mixed with mayo, and it had cubes of velveeta, chunks of ham, and canned peas floating around it. Then she'd spear olives into the top of the ring, because of course it was molded in a ring. And stuff some lettuce in the center. It's giving me Minnesota salads that aren't really salad energy. I'm crying in Minnesota. The 1950s called and want this back. My sister would bring 2 crock-pots, one with spaghetti sauce, the other with water and the noodles. The noodles would be cooking in the water all day. Fucking sin. Lio. Sounds more like porridge at that point. We had a lady who made her special pea-pew fudge, but she wouldn't put it out with all the food. She would walk around with her Tupperware and offer the people she liked a piece. Not more than 1 piece you were allowed to take. If she didn't like you, you didn't get one. This went on for years. The last year she worked there, we all decided to say no thank you when she approached us. Oh, and 2 of us brought fudge for everyone at the table spread. She was furious that we foiled her shitty efforts. Lol, this story would also work in repetitive N. Right. I wonder what it's like sometimes to be a person who thinks, yay, that's the character I choose to be in the story of my life and everyone else's around me. My wife worked with a guy who had been sent over from another team and seemingly forgotten about entirely. He'd spend his days doing stuff like baking in the staff room. They had an oven. He would then offer his treats to people he liked and pointedly not to people he did not like. She found out because she helped herself to a piece of something and was informed that was unacceptable, and he was determining who would get some. So she shut his whole operation down for what was essentially workplace bullying. No more baking at work for anyone. No one else did, and he was removed from their team and sent back to where the rest of his team, and importantly his boss, was so he had to actually work. He had the dream job and he had to be an asshole for no reason. He could have been the guy with 6 full-time jobs. Rather than forgetting about him, I bet they were just trying to get rid of him. An office potluck, as everyone is eating. One of the girls says, "I'm sorry if you find a cat hair in the green bean casserole." My cat kept getting up on the counter to nibble at the edges. Cue everyone looking at each other like what for? This is why I hate the pressure of office potlucks. These people are not my friends and I have no idea what their house looks like. New respect for the guy who bring a giant bag of buns and a tub of margarine. Not as bad as my husband who, on multiple occasions, has suggested that we bring already opened bags of chips and already opened bottles of soda to a party. I have no idea what shenanigans he was into before we met, but I put a stop to that shit real quick. Why waste money on new chips when we need to finish these anyway? I had a co-worker who refused to eat any communal office food. At a previous job, she bit into a cookie and encountered cat hair. And to further that, the cleanest of the clean freaks can still not understand how food should be handled, and little Betty Clutterbug may have the cleanest food surfaces and practices of anyone. My cousin's wife wanted to make pimento cheese sandwiches for a Super Bowl party. Problem is she had no idea what went into pimento cheese and refused to go to the store because it couldn't be that hard. So she mixed a bag of shredded cheese, an ungodly amount of mayonnaise, and for the little red bits, maraschino cherry halves, then dumped approximately a half cup of garlic salt in for good measure. I thought they were a dessert because they were pink and couldn't figure out what a pink sandwich would be. It was truly one of the worst things I've ever put in my mouth. The wildest part about this to me is she knew it was called pimento cheese, but decided to use cherries instead of actual pimentos. Why? I'm guessing she didn't know what pimentos are. And the pepper they're made from is called a cherry pepper, so I can see where she got her wires crossed, I guess. Oh, that's a fantastic coincidence. I know the neighbors' cat peas on everything. I've pet sat for them. I saw that critter pea on the patio next to the grill. Went over for dinner. Chicken asada on the grill. Small piece of chicken went astray right on the patio next to the grill. Neighbor put it right back on the grill. I brought salad. That's all I ate. Even without the cat and its urination, that is fucking grim. Lime jello with Vienna weenies and cherry tomatoes in it. What in the 1950s and dementia is this? My grandmother passed away. The family was dispersing her worldly goods. One of the cookbooks was a gem from the 50s published by the makers of Jell-O. So many disturbing recipes that are now part of an annual Thanksgiving pranked challenge. I believe the reigning champ for most vile was green Jell-O, tuna, mayonnaise and peas. It's pressed into a bundt cake, mold and sliced. Only 2 brave souls out of the 50th attendees sampled that delight. My junior year of college, I got my first real apartment with an actual kitchen. As a housewarming present, my mom, who is an amazing cook, gave me this giant box of old cookbooks she had hanging around. Most dated back to the 50s and 60s. As someone that was raised on mom's home cooking, those processed food recipes were an abomination, but were they fun to read. I'm in my 40s now and have a group of friends that do the themed dinner parties several times a year. One was a 1950s housewife theme, old school cocktails and casseroles. Each couple was tasked with something specific, be it before dinner cocktails, during dinner cocktails, after dinner cocktails, after dinner cocktails, appetizers, salads, main, dessert, etc. I will say that the 1950s cocktails had us so plastered that we were able to eat the period recipes we'd all brought. All I can say now is that Grandpa's generation knew how to drink. It's the secret to Grandma's 1950s recipes. Her taste buds were killed off by cigarettes, and she was constantly buzzed from the gin flask in her purse. Some kind of lasagna made by someone who had no clue what lasagna is. There were layers of pasta, but the rest was things like chicken, grated cheddar cheese, canned jalapenos, mushroom soup, frozen mixed vegetables, spicy mayo, etc. This is how my grandma used to make chicken pot pie. From the outside, it would look fine, but you'd cut into it, and there would be linguine, water chestnuts, frozen meatballs, etc. You never know what you'd get. This is horrifying. One day, due to budget constraints, you'll be forced to throw together a meal consisting of macaroni, soy sauce, black beans, and chocolate syrup. You'll wipe away a tear and think just like Grandma used to make. She threw whatever she had in a pan, didn't she? Like some sort of back of the cupboard casserole, a garbage can, in, a pan, a frugal strudel, no. A work colleague brought in a half-filled casserole dish of little smokies, mini cocktail sausages, probably made up of Tootsias animals, to a potluck. I asked her about the recipe, and she said that she didn't know. Apparently, they were leftovers from a 3-day camping trip she had in eastern Washington. That means they were prepared by someone else at some outdoor site, picked over and then packaged up, hopefully in a cooler. But who knows? And driven at least 5 hours through a mountain pass before they ended up on our conference room table in Seattle. Blech. Potato salad, with multiple hairs from his head, I hope. I just know they were human hairs, and they were tight and curly. Tato salad. A custard pie that wasn't made well, so it tasted like cold eggs. It was like chewing farts. My weird neighbor brought me over some of her special coconut cream pie, and it was literally vanilla pudding mixed with shredded coconut straight out of the bag into a pie shell. The texture was disgusting. Bottom line is, if you can't really make a pie, just go buy one at Safeway. A half-eaten chicken something dinner from their meal at Olive Garden the previous night. We had a bouchée de Noël baking contest in French class in high school, and one girl brought one, in that when the teacher cut it had a bunch of hair baked through it. This was my first experience with never trust what someone else baked at home unless you've seen their kitchen. I love telling this story. I worked at a patient care clinic with mostly nurses. One nurse brings mashed potatoes inside of a Walmart bag. Not inside of a bowl, inside of a Walmart bag. Mashed potatoes. Loose. Inside of a Walmart bag. That could have previously held raw chicken or some other gross thing. A nurse. I ended up posting about it on Facebook later, after having forgot we were BB friends. Oops. Did she reply? Yup, she said thanks, then moped around the office for days. Oh, and someone in my feed offered to come ladle gravy for her straight out of her purse. I'll bring the document folio filled with roast turkey. Coming in hot with a John Sport full of cranberry sauce in the front pocket and stuffing in the big one. Half of a pie. Not half of a pie that was sold that way by the bakery. A leftover half-eaten pie. My Mile recently brought a half-eaten cake to a funeral reception. I work in funeral services and I just laughed out loud. This honestly so typical. Not really a potluck, but a person I used to work with would bring baked goods to quarterly meetings she conducted. Sometimes we'd go in as a team and sometimes we'd gone one. Everyone would rave about her baked goods, but all I could taste was mothball. She lived in an old house. I think she had mothballs in her cupboards to keep mice away. It happened the first time. I thought I was imagining it. The second time I tasted it again. Mothballs are poisonous, so I had to discreetly spit it out. In later years, I had to politely decline her baked goods. It was Halloween party, and they brought a jack-o'-lantern-shaped meatloaf thing. It was just unseasoned ground beef. Had a friend show up with his wife's specialty. It was deviled ham and cheese whiz scooped onto a Ritz. They were also made some time ahead because the crackers were no longer crisp. To make it worse, he walked around with them and his wife telling everyone to try them. That was the night I learned that it would be okay to strategically lie about having food allergies. I need to know what deviled ham is. This one requires some setup because the dish is actually very popular at family gatherings. My dad was well known for his cakes, small variety of different ones. Nothing fancy, just good cake. He made one and iced it to serve later that day at a family potluck. The dog comes along and can barely get his tongue over the edge of the pan and gets about 13 of the icing off the top. Dad had leftover icing. So the moral of the story, eat from the same side of the dish that my dad serves himself from. I'll fall on that sword. I brought shepherd's pie to a Christmas party and thought it festive to color the mashed potatoes green. Oh, you just reminded me of the time when I was 16-ish. I made deviled eggs for an Easter gathering and thought it'd be cute to dye the innards different colors. Didn't account for the strong yellow color already present and had to hand my aunt a platter full of deviled eggs with innards that were various shades of gray and baby poop. Next time dye the whites. It's really easy and looks great. I did this with multiple colors for Easter. The green ones were the only leftovers. People are okay with blue, pink or purple eggs, but I guess green eggs are a little off-putting. I will not eat green eggs and ham. Mushroom and wild rice full of dog hair. Not a strand or two, but full of dog hair. Turns out she ran a sanctuary or something. I could never come back from that. I would literally just shrivel up and die if I was even offered such a thing. My God, this may be the worst one on here. Church social. Chicken wings, baked so dry they looked like mummified body parts. My husband and I went to a potluck at a park shelter one time. Someone had brought vegetables and dip. I was reaching for some when my husband nudged me and told me to look closely. There were bugs all in the vegetables. I don't think they were from being outside because none of the other food had bugs. I think whoever brought the platter either didn't notice the vegetables were full of bugs or didn't care.